Imagine yourself standing in a bustling marketplace in ancient Rome, holding a handful of gold coins. Across from you, a merchant from another country offers silk in exchange. But there's a problem. Your Roman coins mean nothing to him. He wants silver, but you only have gold. How do you decide what's fair? Who determines how much one piece of metal is worth compared to another? Fast forward to today, and that same problem still exists, except now. Instead of gold and silver, we deal with dollars, euros, pounds, rupee, and yen. You probably don't even think about it when you swipe your card on an international trip or buy something online from another country. But behind every transaction is an invisible system that decides the value of your money. But was the exchange rate always like this? Did different currencies start off as equal? And before exchange rates even existed, how did trade work? Today, we're diving deep into the mind-blowing history of money, trade, and the rise of exchange rates, one of the most powerful systems shaping our world. To understand how we got here, we first need to go back to a time when money, as we know it, didn't even exist. Before exchange rates, before even coins and paper money, the world relied on something much simpler: a barter system. If you wanted something, you had to trade what you had for what you needed. A farmer might trade wheat for meat, while a blacksmith might exchange tools for cloth. But barter had a massive problem: finding the perfect trade. If you were a fisherman with a pile of fresh fish but needed wheat, you had to find a wheat farmer who also wanted fish. This was called the double coincidence of wants, and it made trade slow and inefficient. If no one needed what you had, you were out of luck. That's when people started using something valuable but universal: precious metals like gold and silver. These metals didn't rot like food, and they were rare enough to be valuable, but common enough to be used for trade. Civilizations like the Egyptians, Mesopotamians, and Romans began shaping metal into coins, each with a set weight and purity. This was a game changer. Now, instead of needing the perfect trade partner, you could simply exchange coins for whatever you needed. But here's where things got tricky. Not all coins were the same. A gold coin from Rome wasn't equal to a silver coin from Persia. That meant traders had to figure out the value of different coins whenever they traded across borders. This marked the beginning of exchange rates. But instead of banks and algorithms setting them, merchants and traders had to determine how much one currency was worth compared to another, based on the metal content, weight, and trustworthiness of the mint that produced it. As trade expanded across continents, things became even more complicated. With so many different kingdoms and empires minting their own coins, trade became a logistical nightmare. That's when money changers, the early version of currency exchange offices, started popping up in major trade hubs like Venice, Constantinople, and Baghdad. These money changers would evaluate coins, determine their value, and exchange them for a small fee. This was the first real attempt at standardizing exchange rates, but it was still based purely on metal. However, the real game changer came when rulers realized they could control the value of money themselves. Governments began mixing cheaper metals into gold and silver coins, making them worth less than their pure counterparts. This led to inflation and currency manipulation, problems we still deal with today. If traders didn't trust a coin's purity, they would demand more of it in exchange, creating the first fluctuating exchange rates. As trade flourished and economies grew, the need for a more stable, predictable system became clear. And that's when the world turned to gold, not just as a valuable metal, but as the foundation of global finance. By the 1800s, international trade was booming, and economies needed a reliable system for exchanging money. That's when we got one of the biggest financial revolutions in history: the gold standard. The gold standard was simple. Every country's currency was backed by a fixed amount of gold. That meant if you had $20, you could go to the bank and exchange it for a set amount of gold. Under this system, exchange rates were stable and predictable. If 1 British pound was equal to 5 grams of gold, and $1 was equal to 1 gram of gold, then 1 British pound would always be worth $5. This was the closest the world ever came to a fixed exchange rate system where 1 equals to 1. For a while, This system worked beautifully. Trade flourished, and businesses could plan for the future without worrying about sudden currency fluctuations. But then, World War I happened. Governments needed more money to fund the war, so they printed more paper money without having enough gold to back it up. The system collapsed, and by the time World War II ended, the world needed a new way to manage exchange rates. In 1944, as World War II was ending, world leaders met in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, to create a new global financial system. They came up with a plan. The US dollar would be backed by gold. All other currencies would be tied to the US dollar. Countries could adjust their exchange rates, but only within a small range. This system, known as the Bretton Woods Agreement, made the US dollar the world's dominant currency, and for a while, it worked. But by the 1970s, the US couldn't keep backing its currency with gold, and President Richard Nixon ended the gold standard in 1971. With that decision, we entered the world we live in today. A system of floating exchange rates where currency values are determined by supply, demand, and government policies. Today, exchange rates fluctuate constantly, responding to changes in economic conditions, political events, and global markets. Unlike the old days of metal-based money, modern currencies derive their value from trust in the issuing government and economy. But could this system be replaced again? With the rise of digital currencies and blockchain technology, some argue that the world is moving toward a single, universal currency that transcends national borders. Cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin have shown that decentralized money is possible, but for now, they remain highly volatile and not widely accepted. Still, the idea that future money won't be controlled by any single government is gaining traction. Could we see an era where money is purely digital and unaffected by politics or national economies? Or will countries fight to maintain control over their currencies, ensuring that exchange rates remain an essential part of global finance? One thing is certain: exchange rates shape our world. They decide the price of goods, the cost of travel, and even the fate of entire economies. So the next time you exchange money or swipe your card overseas, remember, you're participating in a system that's been evolving for thousands of years. And who knows, maybe one day we'll ditch national currencies entirely and move to a global digital currency. But until then, we'll keep asking the same question people asked centuries ago. What is money really worth? If you found this deep dive into the history of exchange rates fascinating, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more mind-blowing stories about money, history, and the economy. What do you think? Is the current system the best we can do, or is it time for a change? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.